We have Mr. Muhammad Teguh Satria, Assistant Systems Manager at NSCC. Teguh has worked in various industry sectors, research, IT services, and finance. So as a systems integrator, applications developer, and technical consultant in HPC and GPU computing technologies. So please welcome Teguh on stage for his presentation on Kubernetes platform in Aspire 2A system.
Okay, thank you, Tong Yan, for the introduction. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to say thank you for coming to this session. Okay, NSCC is exploring a new approach or additional approach for users in making use the computing resources in NSCC. So, if in the morning you are already listening about the digital sandbox, so in this session I will talk about the Kubernetes platform in Aspire 2A. Okay, this is the outline. First, I will talk about the background motivation, why we deploy the Kubernetes platform in Aspire 2A. Then some brief information about the cluster configuration. Then, supported workloads and some policies that we are applied. Then future improvement for this system. Okay, so first, as I said before, for the main system, we recommend users to use Singularity for the containerized application. So we want to provide additional more option for users to run the containerized application. So this can be how to say, can use the Kubernetes to solve this. And then second thing is to handle some supporting application for the main HPC application. So in Aspire 1, we have some cases where users actually need to run a small application, for example, the MongoDB, to support their main application, computing application. So there is scenario where they put their dataset in the MongoDB, so they need to launch the MongoDB services first before they can launch their main application. So we thinking that this small size application, we can shift it out to Kubernetes, so we can make some space for other users to make use of our main system, the Cray EX system. So this is the case. And then to support more types of workloads, I think we know the Kubernetes quite flexible, offers some flexibility in the type of workloads. Detail of type of workloads I will discuss in the next slides. And okay, before discuss further about the Kubernetes configuration, I want to highlight the environment. So if you are familiar with the Kubernetes, right, usually people driven by the cloud community, or they may have their own Kubernetes system maybe in the PC or small workstation, something like that. But here we deploy the Kubernetes system within Aspire 2A system architecture. It means it is an on-premise SPC system, so there are some constraints that we need to follow and to adapt when we deploying the Kubernetes system. For example, login nodes and visualization nodes are the main working space for users. So typically for user when interacting with the SPC system, they need to go to login nodes or to then do some command lines to submit the job, or they can go to the visualization node to get like a remote desktop session, and they do their working tasks there before they submit jobs to the SPC system. And then, in Aspire 2A we have main scheduler and accounting system. It is the Altair PBS Pro and Altair Budget. So in Aspire 2A, we want every single resource usage by user is recorded, is counted in the single accounting system. So, and then the parallel file system storage. I think earlier Paul already explained about the storage in SPR2A. We have Lustre and GPFS. Then we also, in SPR, we have some security policy that applied. Then this must be followed also for the Kubernetes system. So for example, job must run as a user's UID. We should not allow user to run a container as root because due to security concern. Okay, this is the so-called the SPR2A system. I think earlier Paul already mentioned we have big main system. Can I use this? Yeah, we have Cray EX as the main system here. It has 768 nodes, and we have the accelerated nodes with total around 352 GPU, 800 GPU nodes. And there is large MEM nodes, around 60 nodes. Then we have high frequency nodes. So this is where we deploy the Kubernetes platform. So the in high frequency nodes, there are 16 nodes. With each node have got 2 sockets of AMD Milan 75F3. It's 32 core, but the turbo boost up to 4 gigahertz. Then 512 GB RAM, and it has 5 GB interconnect, and also equipped with a Slingshot interconnect. And the OS is Red Hat 8.4. Yeah, it is it's small system, but it's good starting point for us to try to adopt this new approach in using the SPC system. Okay. This is the illustration of the configuration in our Kubernetes platform. So as you see, first we have the login nodes and visualization node as a working place for users. So users need to log into login nodes or the visualization before they can interact with the Kubernetes platform. So all the things in this box, the Kubernetes cluster, is deployed in the high frequency nodes. So here we have master nodes in the form of VMs, virtual machines, and we have around 14 nodes for worker. Is in the bare metal setup. Then there is a private image registry based on Harbor. Then in terms of the storage, we have it connect to the available storage in SPR2A. Like we have GPFS around 8 petabyte, and we have Lustre approximately around 10 petabyte. Then we have NFS. Actually, NFS is is exported from the GPFS storage. Then we use this NFS to make it as a storage class. So it can be a persistent volume for that visible in the Kubernetes platform. This is the storage class. And in the right hand side, this platform actually mostly using the open source software. So as you see, we have Containerd for the container engine, and then we have Nginx for the ingress controller, then Calico as the CNI, we have Harbor for registry, then Velero for backup, and the Fluentd for logging, and lastly for monitoring, we have Prometheus and Grafana. I think the next slide. This is a sample. Okay, when I got this screenshot, actually our vendor is still working on it, so you might see some scheduling is disabled. this is the sample snapshot from the Grafana, and this is the some services in the Kubernetes. Okay. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we want because we have main Alter PBS Pro as the main scheduler, and we have Alter Budget as our main accounting system. So we want this is working is still working is still in the progress. We are trying to integrate the Kubernetes with the Alter PBS Pro and the accounting the accounting system in Alter Budget. So yeah, this is the idea actually how Kubernetes interact with the PBS Pro, and there should be like so-called adapter that bridge between the API server in the Kubernetes and the PBS Pro scheduler. We'll explain more detail about this maybe in the full launch session. Yeah, this is supported workloads. At the moment, we only observe 4, but along the way, if you have more requests or more demand from user, then we can explore more type of workloads. First is a job. Job is similar like job in the main system. So it's typically user just run pod once, then wait until it completes. Once complete, and that's it, and done. So in job, it's also support the parallelism and some feature for like suspend or set the wall time for the pod. And the second thing is about the cron job. It's similar like jobs, but in cron job you can set a schedule or repeating times for the jobs to be executed. And then the deployment. So this is for applications that are persistent and stateless. Stateless means it doesn't care the network or doesn't need like static identity. So typical application for this is like a web GUI based application. So usually people deploy, for the application, right, deploy, and then they create the Kubernetes service to link the to make the application is accessible from the user side. And the last thing is about the stateful set. This is similar like deployment, just the difference is this is for application that require static identity like static hostname or fixed IP. Then typical use case for this is like for database kind of application. And about the user and security policy. Okay, the Kubernetes service is based on request basis, and so upon onboarding, we will provide the SSL cert and the kubeconfig for user so they are able to call some the Kubernetes command like kubectl and so on. And we have the interface for users is via login nodes for command line and via visualization nodes for remote desktop session. So for some web-based web UI application, they should be able to access via visualization nodes. And for security concern, the role-based access control is enabled. So we try to organize projects to have their own respective namespaces. So, and then for each namespace got a certain resource limit. And so then the so-called the PI or project leader have control to set the role for his or her own member. For example, they may have a case like they have one staff that allowed to submit pods, and maybe they have another staff that not really familiar with the Kubernetes, so he just want this user to use the pod, not like modifying or creating or submitting the new pod, something like that. And the pod security policy is enabled. So there are 3 levels of so-called restriction or security level. By default, all pods must run, from the users, all the pods must run as a user's UID and GID. And in this case, they are allowed to mount all the storage, the GPFS, the Lustre, and also the persistent volume. Because the pod itself running as a user UID, so inside there is access control that can protect the other data. Then the second level is restricted. In this level, the pod is allowed to run as root, but then we are not allowed the pod to mount the Lustre and GPFS, and also the local. It's not allowed. So the only storage that allowed to mount is the persistent volume, which is we have the NFS based storage class I mentioned earlier. And the third one is privilege. This is designed for applications that are maintained by the administrator. Yeah, for future improvement, as mentioned before, current starting system is deployed in high-frequency nodes. It's all CPU nodes. So in the future, we might add some GPU nodes, so improve more flexibility for users to make use of the Kubernetes platform. And we thinking to add like bare metal load balancer. As I mentioned earlier, current working space for users is in the login nodes and visualization nodes. So so once we are thinking, if we in the future, once we have the bare metal load balancer, the user may have like ability to interact directly with their application, especially for the web-based application. But of course, after the VPN, after they access log into the VPN, it's still behind the VPN. And then more option for the storage. At the moment we have Lustre, GPFS, and NFS-based storage class. So we are working with our vendor, HPE, try to see the possibility to use to support CSI-based storage based on the existing GPFS. Then this also about the object storage. This is usually driven by user that familiar with the cloud platform, right? So there are also some requests to have like the object storage. In the future we may thinking to have it in our Kubernetes platform. I think that's all for me. If you have any question.
Thank you, Teguh, for his very interesting work on integrating Kubernetes on our high-frequency nodes. So, are there any questions? I don't see one on. Yeah. Please.
So basically, I can see the Kubernetes for application deployment, right? Are we able to use Kubernetes for training or evaluation? Kubernetes. for example, we want to train the models with data and algorithm. Are we able to use Kubernetes?
Yeah, as I said before, it's based on request basis. So because currently we have small sets, so we not sure whether we have a project call or something like that for that. Then based on the request and then what's the profile of the project, we may try to work with the users how to help them to use the Kubernetes.
So what is the provided system here is the basic Kubernetes, so that we can do all the Kubernetes deployment config by ourselves.
Okay. At the moment, we ask vendor to deploy Jupyter Hub. There's a starting so-called use case. We also use this application to accept the deployment that is done by SPE. So if Jupyter Hub can run, can launch Jupyter Lab and can handle the authentication, then we accept the deployment. So likely after you say okay, then we may open the Jupyter Hub for like starting application for that.
Sorry, I have one more question.
Yeah.
Because we have been using Kubernetes, for example, we deploy our application on AWS. Then by using AWS, we have the ability to scale up and down our system and specify what resources we want. And our end user, for example, we can request for a public IP address, and our end user can access to our web-based application on the Kubernetes system. So for NSCC, is there any option like something like that we can deploy our entire application on that Kubernetes and then get a public IP address? Yeah.
Okay. First about the entire application, yes, it's possible. You say, I say the type of workloads as I explained before, and you see the deployments workloads is how usually user deploy the entire application in the Kubernetes. But then for the public IP,
we are still binded by the government rule because we are under A-Star. So all these things will be strictly evaluated. We cannot be providing like the cloud that able to freely letting the uncontrolled access.
No, it actually not.
From your perspective, it's different. From the cyber security, it's totally different. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm so sorry, but I feel that this Kubernetes part, I didn't see the very clear application of it when it's sitting together with NSPC entire SPI2 system.
It's not together sitting with the whole system. It's just the high frequency nodes, the 16 nodes that I described that.
Yes.
It's not on the main system itself.
Yeah, so I can see, right,
Yeah.
in the figure you...
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
it's okay. So one first.
And the slide you're showing, like,
Yeah, the big one,
the picture.
The bubble one thing.
Yes.
No. Yeah, this one.
No,
is it?
not the big one.
The big one. Okay.
This one,
Yeah.
yes. So you can see here you have main system, GPU system, and large memory system, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
To me, that three system very clear. I want to use more RAM, I use the first.
Correct.
Then I want to use GPU, I use the second.
Correct.
I want to use CPU, I use the third. But this one, I don't see it.
Now, yeah, this is
Where do you want to use it?
no, this one is actually there is some requirement from the bioinformatics group that they deploy the workflow on this kind of environment. So that is the initial of the design. Okay, so that is the original when we designed that was the use case. But we would like to open up for more use case so that we can expand eventually the number of nodes, type of nodes also expand. Yeah, this is the first experiment. As you also can see, this is expanded to A.
Yes.
A, okay? That means there's a B coming out. So this is what we want because as I said just now when I earlier mentioning about that, we don't have a work pattern of this. So I cannot design a system based on no pattern. Okay? Every users come to me, I mean, I'm working for A-Star for the system, you know, for 20 years. Every user come to me, I want this, I want that. By the time I finish design, user disappear. Sorry, this is a real case over here. By the way, which organization are you from?
I'm from NTU.
Oh, I'm here, okay. Yeah.
So basically, we use Kubernetes very frequent for our proof of concept system. So I'm very keen on how we can
Correct.
using some of this system for our own research and demonstration. But maybe in a separate communication.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Because it will take quite long. Yeah, thank you.
You're from NTU, right? So,
Yeah, I know Kubernetes.
actually, we had communication with Professor Francis Lee and then also Melvin.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, we actually are looking for cases that how to expand this services. Because precisely, I said, I don't have a use case. Yeah, the only use case for presented was the bioinformatics. Yeah. So that's why I want to expand.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. There's one question on Slido, but it's about the data transfer. So I'm thinking we wait for Professor Francis Lee to answer. Okay, so the question is about how to upload and download big files as big as 1 terabyte to the system and how much bandwidth is available. It's too small for file standard. Okay.
1 terabyte is nothing.
Yeah. Okay, let us thank Teguh for his presentation.
Okay, yeah, thank you.